Well, ladies and gentlemen, the future of college football is shaping up as we enter the first 12 team playoff, the first year with first round games. It looks like in 2026, it's going to change once again, very likely expanding to 14 teams, very likely changing the entire structure when it comes to conference championship games, because right now, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. People saying Oregon, they go undefeated and they kind of get screwed, as opposed to Penn State. You look at what happened to them, to where they lose to Oregon. They end up losing 2 games, but they possibly get a better draw than Oregon based off of how the auto bids work and the seeding works. And does something need to change even for next year when it comes to the way these teams are seeded? Right now, it's treated as every conference is equal. That's why the top four Power Four conferences, and also if the Mountain West team is ranked higher than one of the top four conferences, they all get that first round auto bye. Does that need to change because the Big Ten and specifically the SEC are better than the other conferences? You've got a team like Arizona State with a bye. You've got a team like Boise State playing a terrible schedule, getting a bye. Does it really make sense? Let's take a look. College football playoff redesign could come soon, including supercharged championship Saturday with play-ins. Automatic qualifiers could hit the college football playoff world as soon as 2026. And you can see a reconsideration of the CFP can't come fast enough. Days after the announcement of the first 12 team field, there was already meaningful movement towards changing the structure and the format for 2026, according to CBS sources. On the table is the continued sensitive subject of auto qualifiers going forward. The question is how to implement such a structure seemingly preferred by the SEC and the Big Ten. One format being discussed is so-called play-in games during the regular season that would decide at least some of those automatic qualifiers on the field. The championship Saturday could be enhanced by not only number one and number two seeds, meaning for the league title, but also the teams below playing for automatic berths. And you can see the setup here. Think of the top 6 teams at least being involved in a massive championship Saturday, 3-game play-in. And you can see the matchups that this would create. You've got the championship game right here, Oregon against Penn State, Texas versus Georgia. Those were the games that were played. But the other games, these were the extra games that would be played, and they'd make more money with extra games. It would be Iowa and Indiana. The winner gets in. And it would be Illinois and Ohio State. The Big Ten a little bit weaker this year with Illinois and Iowa there making it. But honestly, in a better year where Michigan's better, you could get a rematch Ohio State-Michigan there. So they're looking to extend it, get more product, make more money, and then you can see Ole Miss taking on Tennessee. The winner gets in. LSU taking on Alabama. Winner gets in. I wonder what would happen here. So you're talking about a 14-team format. I mean, I would imagine the loser outside, both Texas and Georgia would get in because they're in the championship game. Both Oregon and Penn State would get in. But what if Ohio State lost to Illinois? Would they be out for sure with 3 losses at that point in a 14-team field? It's interesting to think about. Earlier this year, the Big Ten proposed a 14-team playoff with 3 automatic qualifiers, each for the SEC and the Big Ten. There would be 2 each for the ACC and the Big 12. There was pushback from the other conferences, and the issue was tabled until next year. The 12-team bracket would almost certainly have to expand to accommodate such a structure. The most commonly mentioned number is the 14-team playoff that could begin in 2026. So they're talking about 3 automatic qualifiers for both the Big Ten, and I'm not even sure I would include 2 automatic qualifiers for some of the other conferences. Listen, whether or not you think there should be automatic qualifiers, if you're talking about a 14-team field and 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big Ten, it really wouldn't matter. They would already pretty much guaranteed, based on how strong the conferences are, get 3 teams in. So the fact that there's the automatic qualifiers, that's more so to add in extra games, I feel like, for the conference championship weekend, and also kind of have this balancing act to where you're not penalizing the teams for making the conference championship, because if you don't make it, you do get more rest. But then you have the idea right now to where it's structured with the 12-team field where you will kind of want to make it and then win it. But even if you make it and win it like Oregon, you might get screwed based off of seeding because of the other automatic qualifiers, bumping down really good teams lower in the field because they have to bring up a team like Arizona State. They have to bring up a team like Boise State. So this is all very interesting. It does look like it's going to expand to 14 in 2026. Maybe it expands to the FCS level, which is 24 teams, although I think It's probably not going to happen when it comes to that. Such a change would lessen the need for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee to actually select teams. In this model, the SEC and Big Ten would determine some of their participants on the field on that championship Saturday. And again, that's more games for them. And you're also having more teams play, so you're not penalizing the teams for being in the championship while the other teams sit at home and then they still get in. Because that's what happened with teams like Tennessee and Ohio State. I mean, they didn't get the best of seeds, but still, it's the idea of having an extra week of rest. So this really doesn't surprise me. And I would imagine this, at minimum, it's going to be expanded to 14 teams. The problem right now is the structure. You're going to have some of these teams not want to play in their conference championship. I mean, the SMU situation was a little bit different when you look at SMU because they said, well, we shouldn't even play in the conference championship game. We have one loss. If we have suffer another loss, and if they would have lost by like 2 touchdowns, which they were down by 2 touchdowns late in that game, they probably wouldn't have made it. But they end up making it because they only lose by a field goal. But they're thinking, well, why did we even play in this game? It can only hurt us. It can, there's a much bigger chance we won't even make the playoff. That's more so because their conference is bad. If you're an 11-1 team, you should pretty much be in guaranteed in a Power 4 conference, but their conference was bad to where if they lose by a lot, they possibly wouldn't get in 11-2, but they still made it. But the idea is they don't want to get rid of the conference championship games. That's not how you attack this. If you're looking at this from making more money, you attack this by adding more games. And now you've got 3 games in the SEC, 3 games in the Big Ten. All of the winners get in. The losers, I'm guessing some of them still would get in. But that's where that kind of weird thing comes into play to where it's like, well, what if Ohio State lost as like the 3 seed in the Big Ten, facing what would it be? You'd face the 6 seed and the 4 would face the 5. What if you lose that game? Now you have 3 losses. You're Ohio State. You lost on conference championship weekend. You didn't play in a conference championship, but you played in that extra extended game. You see how they're trying to, push for more and more inventory? It's like they've just created 4 more games out of thin air. The college football first round playoff. These games, they've created many games when you look at it, because then they've got another round, and I think there's 2 more extra games that are in and outside of these 4 games that are coming up in the first round. So they're trying to get more inventory out. And right now, the entire structure of college football is so messed up. Take a look at a team like Marshall. Marshall goes 10-3. They, for whatever reason, fire their head coach. Now, they did have a lot of close games. They weren't that dominant, but they won their conference. They went 10-3, but they fired their coach. And then the entire team enters the transfer portal and they say, we can't play. And so now they can't play Army. They were going to play Army in a bowl game. They're like, we can't play. So there's a 10-3 team that can't play in their bowl game because 40 of their players, over 50% of their roster, or not, almost is in the portal. So it's just a total mess. And that's why the date of the portal opening needs to change. And that's why there needs to be some leadership within college football. They were not ready for this at all. It's not just that, though. It's also the rampant NIL. And now you've got Oregon going off the rails with Nike spending money on everyone. And this is another Texas A&M thing. And it's just not good for these kids. And then you've got these kids running rampant, going around. They're at like their 4th different team now. Like they'll commit to a team, they'll decommit 5 times to different teams, then they'll play their freshman season at one school, the sophomore season gets played at another school, the junior season gets played at another, and there's no penalty for this. And then they're like, well, there's no penalty for coaches, leaving. Well, yeah, they're grown adults and they're not the same as players. There's going to have to be a penalty. You can't be transferring 4 times in 4 years. That's absurd. And that's just free agency after every single year. I mean, and it's not good for college football. The fans cannot get to know their players. They're constantly shuffling in and shuffling out. There needs to be a system that's organized and formatted and structured in a way that really makes this to where right now, I think these years of the transfer portal, the start of it, it's just totally wild and off the rails. And it's kids just, I mean, if you're a kid and you had a good year, maybe you love your school, but if you get more money elsewhere, you're probably going to do that. And that's what these kids are taught, because you never know with football and how dangerous it is and how the injuries work. If you get your money, you take that. So listen, when it comes to how it is right now, it's not good. They need to change something. They need leadership. They need structure, and they need an actual format in terms of the transfer portal. And the transfer portal should not be open at all until after all of the games are played. It needs to change totally. You open it in early February, you open it in late January, whenever, after the day after the national championship. Have a huge thing where all the players enter. It might be a little bit tougher on the coaches and stuff, but there should be like, right now it's this weird thing where you've got some of the kids entering the portal, but most of the kids are not yet because all of the big schools, they're all playing in the playoff games, but then they enter it after. Why not just do it to where it's this huge day where everyone enters, and it could be like the day after the national championship, and then you've got a huge spectacle even after the national title, because normally that's like a hangover, and nobody wants to talk college football once that's done. But now you've got this weird thing where all these kids are entering, but their games are still going on. It's totally unstructured. So we'll have to see if that ends up happening. But I do think automatic qualifiers, it's more inventory, it's more games. You're also going to have the conference championship stay, which I like. I think winning the Big Ten, winning the SEC, it's a cool banner to have. It's still there. And listen, if the Big Ten gets 3 automatic qualifiers in a 14-team playoff, it really doesn't matter. The Big Ten was already going to get 3 teams in anyways. The interesting thing becomes, let's say you've got the structured matchups 1v2. Both of those teams are going to make the playoff anyways, because that's the conference championship game, even the loser. 3v6. Let's say the 6 beats the 3, and if the 6 has like 4 losses, then you're talking about a 4-loss team being in the playoff because of an automatic qualifier game that's not even a conference championship. So this is all stuff that needs to be taken into account, but they want more games, not less. They want to extend the schedule, and you go to 14 teams, you're going to be getting even more games on top of that, and now you've got these auto qualifiers happening on the conference championship weekend to try and put extra emphasis on the original conference championship games rather than remove the conference championship games because people are saying they shouldn't have those. I don't know what the format would be like in the ACC. The ACC itself is going to have to recruit better. Clemson still recruits pretty well, but Miami, it's a weak conference right now. And the same thing for the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is in a worse spot at this point than the ACC. At least the ACC has some stable powers like a Clemson, Miami, but those teams, it's just both of those conferences are not good right now. They don't stack up to the Big 10 and the SEC. And that's even the Big 10, you could argue, a little bit of a down year with USC and Michigan not having good years. I guess maybe Indiana stepped up and filled the void, but you've got your Oregon, you've got your Ohio State, you've got your Penn State. Those are rock solid teams. And then Iowa's always solid. So listen, when it comes to this, it is going to go to 14 teams. The question is, are they going to structure it like this? I would imagine they will, because there's murmurs that there's no point in competing in a conference championship. Well, they don't want that. They don't want less games. They want more games. So let's make the conference championship more meaningful rather than give these teams that don't make the conference championship maybe a little advantage by allowing them to rest. They're going to compete to try and make it. If they lose, they could potentially still make it. Like if a 3 seed loses to a 6 seed in a 14-team field in the Big Ten, you're probably still going to make the 14-team field. But I wonder if are those like, I don't think the loser would for sure be out. Like the idea is do or die games where the loser doesn't make it, but I don't think so. I don't think that's how that would work. But people would get pretty pissed. But you have to understand, 3 SEC teams were already going to make the playoff anyways, whether they get auto qualifiers. Now, if you want to say 4 teams, I still think 4 teams will make it anyways in a 14-team field, but people would be pissed about that, like 4 auto qualifiers in the Big Ten and the SEC in a 14-team field. But that would give potentially 2 spots or even 3 spots, depending, but at least 2 spots for the ACC and the Big 12. And then you'd have at least 1 group of 5 spot, and then you'd have Notre Dame as the independent, which we would expect, but maybe more, maybe some years Notre Dame doesn't make it. But either way, that's just how it would work. You can see ESPN has said absolutely not on auto qualifiers because then it's an invitational. That's one Power 4 administrator outside of the Super 2. They love the tournament style. It's a mini version of the NCAA tournament. Yeah, 1 spot for your championship, but not multiple. What do you think the American public will think about that? Well, I think you would still have you'd still have the tournament. It's just the teams being auto qualified into the tournament. The tournament is still going to be there. The 14-team field, the vessel is still going to happen, or the 12-team field, which is what it is right now. But it's 12 this year. It's going to be 12 next year. I just don't know. Are they going to try and change the format next year? Because this is a bad format. There's just no way around it. It's because the leagues are so unbalanced. But it is a bad format. So I don't know if they'll change it. But either way, guys, just a little interesting thing there when it comes to the structure of college football and how it potentially will be changing again, and there might be more inventory, and there's possibly going to be even 2 more games if they extend it to 14 teams. But either way, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.